feel.
Oh. There you go. Now we're
All right,
talk about
so talk about critical race theory. And like I said, I just Googled it and I was getting ready to like print it out and bring it over here because I don't know exactly what the term means. I mean, I can tell you what I think it means. And I wanted to ask, what does that mean to you? Or do you even, you know?
It's got something to do with education, doesn't it?
I think so. And like I said,
Teaching more Black history in the schools
yes.
than they have been. I think, I'm not sure.
And so, well, so I guess I'm thinking that too. And, you know, it's really interesting because there are, I guess, you know, there's quite a hullabaloo about it. And some people are just like really angry and upset about the push to teach more about exactly like, you know, what happened in the history of this country. And so do you guys, are you aware of, you know, just the way that things have been portrayed in the history books? Just asking.
You're going back a long way now.
So here's what it
School was
is.
a long
Oh,
time
thank
ago.
you, thank you. Go ahead.
So it's just the overview. Critical race theory is a body of legal scholarship and academic movement of the U.S. civil rights scholars and activists who seek to examine the intersection of race and U.S. law and to challenge mainstream American liberal approaches to racial justice.
Okay.
So, but I believe they're trying to teach it in the schools. And they're fighting it. My understanding is more of the flip side of the impression that we got in high school. So getting two versions is basically what you have the history that we were taught, which may be skewed. And then you're going to bring in the other side, which will be skewed, because they're all going to be skewed to their version. But at least you have both sides, and that's what I call it.
Right, because you know, I will tell you that I actually learned Black history in Sunday school. You know, I had a teacher a Sunday school teacher who, you know, felt like, oh, okay, let me go ahead and teach things, you know, because interestingly enough, I mean, besides, well, George Washington Carver, you know, a lot of people know who George Washington Carver was. Am I going too far? Do you guys know who George Washington Carver was?
He invented something.
Well, he invented a whole lot of stuff, you know, from peanuts. He invented a whole bunch of stuff. And I mean, I don't, you know, it's been a long time since, you know, or Harriet Tubman, you know, I mean,
There we go.
okay, that's good one. All right. You know, or even like Frederick Douglass. And, you know, the thing of it is that Black people basically have been excluded, you know, because all right, during Black History Month, like this past year in February, I posted a lot of stuff on our website, the Buzz, Keller Williams Buzz. You know, every day there was like a little Black history fact or whatever that I posted, because there are a lot of inventors. Does anybody know who Dr. Charles Drew was? He discovered, he didn't invent, he discovered blood plasma, which allows us to do transfusions now. Sadly enough, he died as a result of a car accident and they didn't give him a transfusion. Yeah. So, you know, there are a lot of people that, you know, Black people and have contributed to things. And, you know, it's all about helping people to have, you know, better self-esteem. when you don't see people like yourself doing things, then you tend not to think that you can do that. And so it's not so much about, like, whatever, it's telling a story. It's about being included because, as a kid growing up, I never saw, anybody on TV that looked like me, or, we played with Barbie dolls and they were white dolls, And so, when you grow up with things like that, it has like an effect. And even though people may say, oh, yeah, that's no big deal. Yeah, well, yeah, it does have an effect because, I will tell you, I felt the greatest source of pride when Obama was elected president. It was just like, oh my gosh, this is just like wonderful. And it was like somebody that I could relate to better, not saying that I couldn't relate to anybody else before, but better. And it's, there's a whole lot of interesting stuff that, oh gosh, for a few years now, like the History Channel, there was a program that they had on called Slave Catchers. Slave Catchers, what was the other part of it? But it talked about how slaves were constantly escaping from their plantations, many times not just to go to the north, but to reunite themselves with their families because slave masters used to take kids away from mothers and they would escape because I don't know how they knew this, but to go to where their kids were or their family or whatever like that, to reunite themselves with their family members. And that there was a constant sort of cat and mouse game between the dudes like the bounty hunters and whatnot that were, paid to capture slaves and return them back to where they were, and the slaves. And there was, there was a whole lot of stuff going on. And of course, there was the Underground Railroad. There were people that would help, slaves when they were on their way to escape and stuff like that. And they had 6 secret signals and stuff like that. And it was pretty sophisticated. And so it wasn't the, typical, you got the slave sitting on the porch on the shack, playing a banjo, and he was like happy that he was, doing that. People were not happy, and it was not, a pretty thing. And a lot of the things that happened that were done, it's the same thing as, if we can give it an analogy, Nazism and concentration camps and things like that. And it's a part of history that Germany would like to forget, but the Jewish people are not going to ever let anybody forget that and what happened there. And so it's, I guess you'd say it's kind of a similar thing that, we don't want to forget what happened. And it's not like saying, well, what are you going to do about it? It's more of I want to be heard. And I'm sure like people can relate to, Trump and his presidency. He won because people felt like they weren't being heard and that he was saying something to them that spoke to them and they were feeling like, neglected and ill-used and things like that. And so it's pretty much, it's like the same thing. It's like, I want to be included in this. The history books just leave out, any mention of, Black people. Like I said, especially when it comes to inventors and things like that, people who did a lot of stuff with very little, and they were, pretty resourceful. Dry cleaning was invented by a Black person, that whole process. And, when people find out, especially young kids, they find out that there are other people that look like them that did stuff, then that just gives them hope and inspiration that they too can do those kinds of things. And so, do you get what I'm saying? It's not like, nobody wants to fight or anything. It's just like, hear me, know me, because, then there were, the Chinese Exclusion Act, a lot of Chinese people, what was it, back in the 20s, I believe, 1920s, were, they felt like they were like coming in and taking people's jobs and stuff like that. And, they wouldn't hire them and were discriminated against and stuff like that. And so, it's just, I guess, an awakening and just an understanding that, we too are America and contributed to the country and the establishment of it. And, just for everyone to understand, like, we are a part of this. And so I guess what I was just going to say, any thoughts about that, or, just wondering.
Yeah, I mean, to be heard is fine. And I think that's fair. Not, and this is, I don't care what race or anything else, you don't have to like each other. I mean, about one person to the other person. I mean, and for some reason, everyone's, what do they call it now? Reverse. I can't think of it.
Reverse discrimination?
It's not reverse discrimination, where, culture.
Cancel culture?
Yeah, cancel culture, where nobody's allowing the other side to be heard and talked. And I think that's where you get the communication, and I think that's where to me, the respect level starts to come up, because now you're debating, or you're talking, or you're, and it's okay not to agree on everything. I don't know if that's, what sometimes you're saying, but I think that's what we don't see a lot.
Because people just have their own opinion and they
And
don't
are
want to
not
see
open.
anybody else's opinion. That's what it's come down to anymore. You can't, if you're a Democrat and I'm a Republican or vice versa, you can't have a conversation with anybody anymore. It just breaks down so quickly.
And social media doesn't
It's the
help,
death of us.
because
You can hide behind social media.
absolutely. And, I've just watched online as conversations just devolve into, well, you're stupid and you're an idiot.
Mhm.
Instead of just asking the questions, well, how do you feel? Or, why do you feel the way that you do? And how can we come to a better understanding? Because, as Diana Kokoska said, at any given time, everyone's doing the best they can. And, some people have more tools for, is there somebody? Oh, Giselle, she's the person who, is she
She
on?
popped up about, what, a minute ago?
Hi, Valerie. How are you?
Okay, good. I didn't know if I needed to let you in or something, but I guess.
No, I'm in.
Oh,
Can I just jump in real quick?
You
No.
certainly,
So you're just on the screen.
you
that's it.
certainly can.
I just wanted to say, I read an article recently about the Bruce family in California. It was a Black family. They were the first Black family to own some beach property in Los Angeles and California. And it was a successful business where Black folks kind of hung out at the beach. Lots of them had careers like actors and business and professional executives. Well, that didn't sit well with the people that lived in the area. And some of those people were KKK people back then. And this was like 1924. So they had a smart lawyer, and they actually used, they took the land from them using something, I think it was eminent domain. If I may.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah. So they took the land from them back in the late 1920s. So their family, they had to move. They lost their land. They lost their business.
Wow.
Their lives were threatened. This was in the news recently. The good news is 94 years later or 100 years later, however, I'm not doing the math. The family, the Bruce family, their heirs, their land was returned.
Oh, wow.
So the government stepped in and said, hey, this was wrong. We stole the land. And finally, their land was returned. Now, what they're going to do with it, how they're going, I don't know, the value of the land, I think it's millions of dollars now.
Wow.
So it does happen, even though we have the federal fair housing laws, even though we have the Civil Rights Act of 1866, even though we have all this in place. This has been going on and may still be going on. But to bring light to it is difficult, because there's a lot of shame with it. And some people have a hard time with it. And after saying all that, I come from a diverse family. And I believe that everyone should be treated equal and fair, the way I want to be treated. And I'm sure we all agree on that. So, I mean, I just wanted to bring that case. If you want to read it, you probably could Google it. It's called, the family's name is Bruce. So it was called the Bruce Beach, and it's in California. So this just recently happened. So it does exist.
That's that is very interesting. And it's a tough thing to acknowledge the past of the United States, because of course there's the greatness and the things like that. And, it also has its dark side, and that people kind of don't want to acknowledge that is kind of interesting. And it would be also interesting to sit down and just ask, like you said, Jim, like nowadays, nobody wants to hear what somebody else has to say. I would personally love to hear someone's side of the story who feels like, it shouldn't be told, just to understand why somebody may feel that way.
If what they say in public, it's pure ignorance, that's all. You know what I mean? They just don't.
I think in general, society likes to divide us. Whether it's, our political affiliation, now it's like vax versus anti-vax, and then, racism.
Mask
obvious.
versus anti-mask.
Yeah, I mean, and obviously race has been something that has been, something that has divided us for, the country for a long, long time. So I just feel like it's just another way to keep us divided so that we're not a united front. And that's, the more we learn about it, I guess the less easy it is to keep us divided. So that I guess that maybe there's a reason why they're not putting it in the school books and letting people find out more and more about it, because maybe they want to keep that divide there. They want to, they don't want to educate you enough to the point where you feel like you're not the same, if that makes any sense.
And so, it's just, once again, it's very interesting. And it's also interesting to see the response of people as, the country becomes more brown, shall we say, more diverse, whatever term you care to use, that, you kind of got the people who sort of feel like, well, the United States is supposed to be a white Christian nation. And when somebody starts to bring up something else, oh my, heaven forbid, this Congress person is a Muslim. Oh Lord, oh, they're trying to introduce Sharia law into our country and stuff like that. And it's sort of like, what makes someone say that about, something that's different? Is it a scary thing that there might be somebody different? What exactly is it?
Probably not knowing, being uneducated about what their beliefs are and what they can actually bring to that position, whatever that is. It's the unknown that I would assume would be the scariest.
I think a lot of it, to me, is education would be more understanding,
Okay.
which would be the ideal situation. But I think it's used as now, like as you said earlier, a weapon
Yeah,
to
to keep us
use
divided.
against you
Mhm.
instead of to unite you.
Yeah,
And so the fear of being judged, what your side may or may not have done is a big issue.
and then you have the stereotypes of what your side is,
Right.
too, versus, like, they like to stereotype, African Americans as being like thugs and gangsters and that kind of stuff, you know what I mean? And then you have, Muslims are terrorists, like you have these bad stereotypes that again force that fear and again push a further divide between the races. And not everybody, their stereotypes for a reason, because, that's not what people actually are. There are people that are like that, but that's not everybody. And everybody doesn't think that way. Everybody doesn't have the same beliefs like that.
Problem too is your family and what they believe, because they teach you as a child.
Yes.
I mean, in the beginning, you take little kids that are like 3 and 4 years old, they're all on the playground, all playing together,
Yeah.
nobody's got any prejudgments, they're all having fun, but then the parents start, their beliefs start coming in more and the children absorb that. It's a very vicious cycle.
Yeah.
I know, I'll leave this out.
How are you?
Hey Val. It's
Hey,
Dan.
Dan.
Hey, how you doing?
Good, how are you?
Good. My comment to your question, unfortunately, I think that a lot of people are racist and they are so that way because they're ignorant. They don't know, like, living in Jersey, it's typical to live in a fairly diverse development or neighborhood. And I go back to my roots in Philadelphia for 30 years, and there's a lot of people in some of those areas who are, I believe they're racist, and partly because they're ignorant. They haven't been in day-to-day normal living situations with minorities. And I think if they were, they would quickly realize that, the minorities I know want the same thing I want, good place to live, a job, health, and family. So, when you grow up in these crazy isolated communities, they don't even have I worked in Bucks County for 30 years. A lot of people there have literally never had a one-to-one conversation with anybody in a minority. And it's incredible sometimes, but unfortunately it's there. It's I mean, the politics I've seen in the last few years, I think just maybe hardened some of those positions instead of made them better. And I really think maybe, for us as agents, we have to just be mindful of that and be disciplined not to succumb to a buyer or seller who's leaning or pushing us or to some, nonverbal agreement to do things a certain way, and just draw the line and call it out. And maybe also we could do outreach to certain demographics about becoming a real estate agent. Go to the local high school or community college or places and, just sort of spread the word about it is a great career with, kind of a fairly low bar of entry. You don't have to have a PhD. You get out of high school and you're good to go. And that's, one of the, coming from kind of a Irish Catholic blue collar, life, you you get a little bit of taste like that, and there's not even opportunities anymore for somebody who's young, smart, and aggressive to come out and get a decent paying job. So to me, I think there's a big opportunity, and I don't know how to do it, but for KW, either locally, or regionally, or nationally, to reach out and do some proactive things, or at least ask. Go to like Burlington County Community College. You'd be a great speaker to go there and just talk about, hey, there's great opportunity in real estate, and Keller Williams supports diversity. And, you should come visit our office and attend a meeting, like anything like that, that would just sort of talk the talk a little bit. And, just, we can do our own thing. The hell with everybody else, people are assholes, they're assholes. You know what I mean? Like, we're not going to change them. So they'll all die off eventually, right? And you'll have a different viewpoint.
Interestingly enough, the diversity and equity task force has been working on just that.
Awesome.
And right now, there's a gentleman, and he's actually in Atlantic County. And so in Atlantic and Monmouth County, they've actually started programs to encourage young people, old people, African-American folks to come in and be mentored and get some scholarship help to pay the fees to enter into the real estate business. And actually, Tiffany Radamiki, who is the social equity ambassador at Cherry Hill, and I are going to jump on with them with what they're doing, because
That's awesome.
And there are funds that have been set aside for this particular purpose to get more Blacks into real estate, to just to understand the power of owning your own business. And so, so that's going to happen. So I give Gary Keller kudos for making a stand and just saying, this is what Keller Williams is going to do.
Yeah, I really like that. I'm really happy to hear that. If I can do anything, let me know, or make some contacts or calls. I mean, we're so close to, I know the regional high schools pretty well, because my daughter's a teacher and she's coached for 15 years. So we know people at all these local schools. I mean, we've got, the two Camden high schools, right? We got Pennsauken, Ewing, where my daughter works. These are majority schools, and I don't know what kind of access they have, but I can't imagine they wouldn't be excited to hear, from somebody who wanted to engage them in options, and things. Because if you go to Ewing right now, it's like, the graduation rate is probably a little below the state average, and there's a huge military, enrollment coming out of high school there. So kids are looking for opportunities, looking for ways to make money. They're smart, they're aggressive, they're hustling. And I think we're a great offer. We're a great opportunity, and I think there's something there. It doesn't happen overnight. It's a long, slow slog.
You're absolutely right. Actually, that is a great idea, Dan. And one of the other things that I have just started doing is I became a Quantum Leap instructor. It's part of KW Kids Cares, and it's teaching financial literacy to young people 18 to 28.
About people 66 years old. Can you help me?
They do have a Quantum Leap, but it's not for children. It's just Quantum Leap.
But there is Quantum Leap for anybody. And well, the target range is 18 to 28 who can attend for free.
Gotcha.
And I have to go see, because I'm so new, I just still don't even know all the details.
Yeah.
I think that other people can take it outside of that range. They ask for donations because it is a nonprofit. But
I mean, just anything like that you come up with, just keep me in mind for if you need any legwork or anything like that.
Just so you know, I was on one of the calls for the group in Atlantic City and all that, Atlantic County and all. And what they require of these young adults, they have to be at the office at 5:30 in the morning.
Oh.
They got some strict things, and they're gonna be, have the GED or the high school diploma as a minimum. which is the state law, but I'm just saying they push it and they have requirements for people to jump on, so it's not just a give me, it's a earn me. Which I think is awesome, and then also, one of the things I was thinking, and what I suggested is, I was looking for, who would be a good candidate or whatever it is. Pat, my wife used to work for, or be on the board for Habitat for Humanity. Now, here are people that are going through the home selling process or purchase process. Wouldn't they be a great candidate for things like this?
True.
And you were involved with Cat Habitat for a while, right? Pat?
Yes, I was hoping to locate properties and purchase them. And so it's, it's kind of tough for some people, and especially, kids who grow up in areas where they don't see opportunities. And, quite honestly, I mean, growing up where I grew up, it was like a world away from where some people were. Not like I grew up in East Orange, New Jersey, and this was, many, many moons ago when we were just a, regular neighborhood. You had the candy store, down the street. But a lot of these kids, I mean, they face some serious, like, rough stuff, gangs and drugs and all this other kind of stuff. And it's like I said, it's so hard to overcome your environment in order to make something of yourself, and especially when you don't see other people doing these things. As part of it, actually, I'm going to be teaching Quantum Leap too in the office here, because they want me to, because so that other agents know what Quantum Leap is all about. Part of teaching it is telling your own story, because I got a scholarship to a private school for high school, and boy, did I see a difference in the way kids were treated where I went to high school versus the public high schools. And it's no wonder that kids, people with money versus people who don't have money, there's a big difference. First off, we had to wear, I don't want to say uniforms, but you couldn't wear jeans. Guys had to wear a jacket and tie. Girls had to wear either dresses or nice slacks. If anybody fought, you got kicked out of school. And back then it was $3,200 a year. So we're talking 70s, and that was a lot of money. So mom and dad would not be too happy with you if you got kicked out of school. So there wasn't even any atmosphere of that, of fighting. It was all about studying and learning and going to college. It was college prep, and when I was a senior, the headmaster of the school sat down with me and everybody else individually in the class. He knew what I wanted to major in, and he had all these schools lined up for me to apply to. Plus, the school set it up so that there were fee waivers to waive the application fees for all these schools to apply to. When you've got those kinds of things, then obviously you're going to do well, unless you're like really trying not to do well. Versus, I remember my friends who graduated from the public high school at the same time, they had 4 guidance counselors for 2,000 students.
Right.
And they were mostly focusing on the people who were, troublemakers. So when me personally, I always root for the underdog, whether it's a sports match or whatever like that. So I'm always looking to help the person who has a bit of a disadvantage in terms of these things, because is it fair? No. There are definitely things that aren't fair, shall we say. However, if you have the right mindset, you can pretty much overcome anything. That's what I love about Keller Williams. Keller Williams is a company that focuses on getting your mind right first before you do anything else. And, you know, when the adversity and all those kinds of things actually come up, you know, it's kind of like, is it happening to you or is it happening for you? There's a lesson that you can learn in every situation that you're meant to learn and make you a better person, a better version of yourself. And, you know, I don't know. So when I have these meetings, I just kind of like to do a free form thing, and it just could go anywhere. Heaven knows, you know, where it could go. But you know, it's to me, it's all about understanding each other. And you know, what makes us different to me makes us interesting. And your experience obviously is different than mine, you know, but when we combine them all together, it's like, it's, to me, it's such power. And just like my masterminding with a bunch of different agents and stuff, which is what I do every morning at 7:30 to 8:30, you know, and together, a bunch of agents, I mean, everybody's business has exploded. And you know, from sharing and gathering together and doing things together. And you know, it's just so much more beneficial than, you know, the crabs in the bucket kind of philosophy, you know, where everybody's trying to grab and get over top of everybody else. You know, if we could understand and appreciate our differences, it would be, you know, to me, just so much, you know, better. Because right after in 2016, you know, I have to say, you know, Trump had, you know, talking about the Muslim ban, and there's a mosque in Willingboro. They actually put out an ad on Facebook. They said, you know, have coffee and chat, right? Come get to know us. And one of my colleagues from the Rotary Club, he and I went there and we met with them and we had coffee and coffee cake and stuff with them. They were the nicest people. And interestingly enough, they were from a sect of Islam that I guess it's kind of different, like some of the things that they believe. They actually had come from Pakistan and they would have been killed if they stayed there. Their own people, you know, their own, like, you know, like denominational differences, they were like outcasts, you know, and they came, you know, here to the US and they were telling us about the Quran and what they believe and how the Quran teaches them that you are loyal to whatever country it is that you live in. And they're just so giving. They do a food pantry like twice a month and they're just like giving food out to people and stuff. And they're wonderful people. And so you never know like what you can come to find out about people when you just ask instead of, you know, like assuming, oh, they want my stuff. And you know, I truly hope that our country can somehow come to be less, what's the word I'm looking for? You know, just
Divided.
you know,
Divided.
yeah, divisive and divided, and you know, oh my gosh, like
It's gonna take a lot because
Yeah.
it became more divisive later.
you know, it's like never the twain shall meet, and you know, because I'm a Christian, I don't feel threatened by someone else of a different faith. Because I like to kind of look at the similarities that the various religions have, because all of them are kind of have the, you know, love, you know, do unto others kind of thing, and
Kind of fate.
you know, when you look at the things that are in common, you kind of go, you know, it's like your flavor may be a little bit different than my flavor. The basic parts of it, though, are still, you know, be nice to other people. And so, I don't know, it's something that people just,
No,
and you know, you're not supposed to talk about it.
Yeah.
Stage Street is that we hear about the most.
I had watched a documentary a couple years ago. It was really interesting, and it was about the women of welfare and how these women had used welfare as like a culture almost. Their grandmother used it, their mother, and it was almost like a way of life because they weren't taught any other way to provide for their families. And they all started at such a young age. They became teenage mothers, you know, and they just repeated the cycle. And it was really cool to see because I didn't see that side, you know, growing up. I mean, I went to Overbrook High School, so it was pretty diverse. I grew up in Sicklerville, so, but still not knowing that, you know, there are schools that don't have access to the technology that my kids have access to. So my kids automatically are gonna have an advantage over those kids that don't have those resources because they're already behind. They're already, you know, starting off at a disadvantage. But the cool thing about the documentary is that they showed you that with just a little bit of knowledge, that these women, you know, given a little bit of, you know, financial counseling, you know, giving them opportunities to have an interview, you know, a mock interview with somebody on what to say, what not to say in a job interview, giving them the proper clothes to wear to an interview. You know, these women were having great success rates in getting and obtaining jobs and maintaining those jobs and breaking the cycle, getting off the welfare, getting off state aid, and getting themselves out of the projects and making a better, you know, situation for not only them, but now they're creating new habits for their kids to pick up and, you know, really kind of breaking that cycle. So it's really eye-opening just to kind of see, you know, what different cultures are just being taught in the house alone, you know, not even taking school and everything out of the equation, just, you know, looking at your parents and saying, okay, this is how you raised your money, now I'm gonna try to, you know, emulate the same thing or whatever. And it, you know, if you had somebody like, if Keller Williams was able to, you know, educate, you know, people on how to, you know, facilitate their own businesses and that they don't have to resort to, you know, using these resources, I think it's a great, you know, opportunity for both to, you know, get involved in that.
Yes. I'm gonna say something really painful. That, you know, there are a lot more poor white people than poor Black people, simply because there's a lot more white people than Black people in this country. And, you know, it hurts my heart because when people say welfare, it's automatically like an unstated thing that you must be talking about Black people. Really.
Well, I
And no,
I wasn't.
I'm not trying to,
Yeah.
you know, but I'm just saying,
Yeah, no,
that, you know,
is,
there are
right.
dog whistles because
Yeah.
when people use words like entitlement, it's like you kind of know what they're talking about, and it's like, you know, we don't want to give them, you know, things that, you know, because entitlement is a dirty word. It means you're trying to take something that you don't deserve. And, you know, it's, you know, there's always been like this sort of little undercurrent. And, you know, just growing up, I always just understood that I would have to work twice as hard as a white person to get the same recognition. And it's like, okay, I can do that.
And then add a woman on top of that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
You know,
Oh, don't
because,
go down there.
you know, working in software development before being a realtor, oh my gosh, I can't tell you how many times, you know, I'd be over at the copy machine and somebody's like, oh, can you show me how to use the copy machine? I'm like, that's not
Go get a cup of coffee.
Oh, yeah, you know, and you know, it's funny and it's interesting. And then, you know, to understand that I feel like I'm carrying the weight of my race on my shoulders. Anytime I do something, people are looking at me and they're like, see? Because, you know, you just have to understand if you did something or you did something or you did something, you know, people, oh, that's Jim. But if I do something, it's like, whoa, see that black girl did that. You know, it's just different. And I'm just saying it to like put it out there that that's the way it is.
Do you feel like people are waiting for you to fail?
No.
No.
And you know what, it's interesting, I'm just me, and it took, I mean, it took a while, I mean, but then again, like I said, I had the chance to go to, you know, college prep high school and all that kind of stuff. So, I mean, I'm used to being around white people, and used to being the only black person in the room and stuff like that, to the point where I don't even notice that anymore. And it's like, I'm me, and, you know, just love me or hate me for whatever the reason is. And it's like, you know, but everybody has a different way of handling the situation. And, you know, and am I making this up? I'll just put it to you this way. I worked in Switzerland for 1.5 years, and I got to see how people from a different culture act. And it's totally different than the way Americans act, because they had no concept of our culture and the history of our country. And they were simply fascinated by us as Americans. Oh, what do you do? What do you eat? What kind of movies do you like to see? And it was, and they asked all kinds of questions that you go, oh my gosh, you asked that question? Because they didn't know that it was a wrong or a right question to ask. And it was actually relieving, because, you know, there's a certain, for some people, there's a certain level of condescension, because it's kind of like, you know, well, I'm me and you're you. And they talk with a certain level of condescension. They don't even realize they're doing it. And I actually had to rethink my whole stance, because I would meet people over there that looked like people that I was used to knowing, and I expected them to act a certain way. And when they didn't, it kind of like knocked the props out from under me, because I was all ready to be, sort of defensive, I guess you could say, and expecting to defend myself. And it was like, oh, I don't need to do that. And it was just so interesting. I really think that every young person in the United States should travel abroad. They would get a whole new perspective on a whole lot of things. You know.
Well, also, I think, because I traveled, I used to work internationally. The interesting part is when you see these riots, or what they focus on, it's such a minor piece of the country. You know, it's like, it was supposedly this big riot when I was down in Venezuela. It was it's like one street that was having a fight. But if you saw it on the news, you would have thought the world was coming to an end. You know, I mean, you know, it's like, in the focus, like, you know, when and foreigners get interpretations by the news also. Like the LA riots, when I traveled, they just thought that was like the entire country. You know, it's like, we have to live in that country. It's that area, and we're working on it, but there's a whole lot of good, you know. Right. So I agree with you, but the traveling definitely gives you different perspectives.
Oh, for sure. And everybody, I think that, there's once again, everybody, like the attitude of like scarcity of resources, and, if you come in, you're going to take some from me, and my piece of the pie is going to be smaller. So I got to stop you from, taking my little piece of the pie.
Well, I think that's a big piece of it, is if we find there's a flaw something, instead of trying to raise people up, we're trying to bring everyone down to the same level.
And it was interesting. I don't know whether it was a TED Talk or some guy was on somewhere. It was very interesting how he talked about the quote, the aristocracy. You know, the rich, they typically will pit the poor white people against the poor black people. So they're so busy fighting with each other that they leave the rich people alone, you know, so that they can go ahead and, you know, keep getting their tax breaks and stuff like that, whatever. So they can, like I said, they don't have to worry about those pesky poor people because they don't want anything to do with any of them. So, you know, I'm just throwing it out there. Hey, guys.
I had to go pick up my son.
And yes, it's time for me to go because I'm gonna go get this beloved COVID test.
That's always fun.
What do you get? Oh, the test.
Yeah,
When were you with her about
Saturday.
Saturday?
All right, guys, thanks a lot.
All right, Jim. See you, Val.
See you guys.
All righty, bye-bye.
Hi,
You
Valerie.
have to wait 5 days after you've been with somebody.
Oh, really?